Welcome back. And, if you're watching this one after another, which I hope you might be interested enough to do that, you're probably tired of hearing me say thank you very much for your time, but I am really appreciative of it. I know that your time is valuable, and so it means a lot to me that you would be interested enough to listen to what I have to say. This is not going to be really a continuation of my story. Um, I'm I know that he's going to be shaking his head when I say this, but I have a really wonderful fiance that is helping me to talk through this in between these segments that I'm doing. And I forgot something very important in the last segment of my life, which was 14 to 21 when I was in Tennessee. And I talk about having a nervous breakdown. But there was a very important factor that contributed to that. And I mentioned that there were struggles that I had between sexual desires and actions that were not appropriate for being outside of marriage versus wanting to serve Jehovah and make my life all about Him. That was what I wanted. And I had this conflict seemingly constantly going on. And so it reached a point, and it was with Christopher. So it was, screwing around, and then I would feel bad, and I tell him that we couldn't do that anymore, and then I'd screw around with him some more, and then I'd tell him we couldn't do that anymore. The poor man was set on this roller coaster with me, and I did not understand that this conflict went directly back to the abuse that I suffered at the hands of Chuck. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought there was something horribly wrong, and couldn't figure out what it was, and just had so much confusion of heart. And so one day I left town and drove to New York. Didn't know anybody in New York, but the headquarters for Jehovah's Witnesses were there, and that was where I went. And long story short, that trip to New York is a whole other video by itself. I'm not going to go into that now. But while I was gone, Christopher went to the elders for us instead of leaving it up to me, and told them what had been going on with us. So when I got back, I met with the elders, and they didn't make the decision lightly, but they decided that because I was in the full-time ministry and was supposed to be setting an example, that I needed to be disfellowshipped because of the behaviors that Christopher and I had taken part in. And so it's the disfellowshipping that I just want to explain briefly about. When I was disfellowshipped, I was immediately cut off from everybody that I knew. As Jehovah's Witnesses, you're told and taught to have no friends that are outside of the organization. But then when I found myself being cut off from the organization, it meant that I had nobody. And so that was a very important factor in my nervous breakdown, because the announcement was made and everybody was out of my life. And they can't converse with you. It is so rigid. If you're broken down on the side of the road and they see you, they're not supposed to stop and help. So it's very harsh. It teaches you that God's love is very conditional upon you doing everything the right way and having all of the right behaviors, because if you don't, then there are very severe ramifications for you to have to deal with. And so it also threw Christopher and I together more, because his family were not what people would say. They'd be thrilled to hear this. But they were not good JWs. And so they would have me over to their house, and they were very loving and they were very kind, which really made them better people, didn't it? And so they were very accepting of me for wherever I was at the time, and they loved the fact that I was with their son. So it was kind of a win-win for everybody involved. And so once Christopher and I got married, then the elders were more than happy to reinstate me into the congregation because, in their words, sex would not be a problem for me anymore, because what takes place in marriage is blessed by God. It's when it happens outside of marriage. So we just thought it was really important that I discuss the disfellowshipping aspect and how that works, and it is a crucial part of the JW organization, and really does teach you that there is no grace for you, and that God's love is very conditional upon your behaviors, and that is spiritually so detrimental, because we all know how much we need grace, and we need the Lord's love for us even when we're in the middle of the mud puddle, so to speak. So I appreciate you listening, and I hope that this has given some clarity and further explanation as to JW beliefs, and I will look forward to talking with you next time.